It's Labor Day weekend, and your draft's in a couple hours. We got you covered. 10 minutes, all the wide receiver information you need going into 2019. Is arguably the deepest position in fantasy football, but value remains high, especially in PPR, considering you might be using up to 3 wide receivers in any given lineup. There, of course, are guys that really separate themselves from the pack each and every year. DeAndre Hopkins was obviously one of those guys last year. In 2018, he led the season in PPR with 334 fantasy points. So the question remains, what's your strategy going into drafts? For me, you want to focus on targets, volume, red zone targets in particular, and offenses that are high scoring and up tempo. So what's my strategy for the wide receiver position? If I'm looking to pick up a running back early in the first round, I'm trying to swing back with 2 potential wide receivers in the second and third round. But like always, there's a number of guys I consider that should be avoided in most drafts. To be perfectly honest, the avoid list was a little bit more difficult for wide receivers than any other position. And this is because it doesn't necessarily mean a bad receiver is going to result from a bad team. You see receivers each and every year, just on terrible teams that are always trailing, continue to put up numbers because of the massive volume they get in their passing game. But nonetheless, there's a couple of guys for various reasons I want to avoid this year. First up is T.Y. Hilton for Indianapolis. With Luck gone, there's just a huge downgrade for him going into the season. In addition to that, Indianapolis has really built up their receiving core. There's generally just more competition for targets in that offense. After him, I listed Corey Davis for Tennessee. A lot of people are high on him. He had a solid, I would say, sophomore year last year. But really, if you just look at his body of work, there's little production. He plays for Tennessee that really wants to run the ball with Derrick Henry. I just don't see him paying off in terms of value at his current average draft position. After that, I have Will Fuller. Huge production when he plays with Deshaun Watson. But he's coming off a torn ACL right now. In addition to that, there has to be some sort of regression coming. I think he scored 11 touchdowns in 11 games with Deshaun Watson. That's just not unsustainable. And finally, I have Sterling Shepard for the New York Giants listed here. The argument in favor of him this year is that he's the only guy in that passing game left, so he should eat up a lot of targets. But I'm just not subscribing to that right now. He's still Sterling Shepard, a guy that has showed little production, little game over the last couple of years. Even when Odell Beckham was out, he really didn't do much, and he primarily has served as a slot receiver when he has been successful. Now he's going to move to the outside. I'm just not really big on Shepard this year going into the draft. So who am I targeting going into 2019? Well, at the top of the board, it's pretty obvious. DeAndre Hopkins and Davante Adams. These guys, truly to me, are 1A and 1B. But the argument here for DeAndre Hopkins is it's pretty simple. In 2018, he had 0 drops according to Pro Football Focus. Averages 10.2 targets a game, 5th in the league. He has consistent high-end production. And to really showcase his consistency, DeAndre Hopkins actually leads the league, or leads wide receivers in terms of fantasy production from 2017 through 2018. But what actually separated him from Davante Adams here for me was the fact that he's always been able to perform. Deshaun Watson hasn't always been his quarterback. And even during injuries, Hopkins still finds a way to eat. It's just a consistent wide receiver. He has talent regardless of quarterback. So for that simple reason alone, I bumped him up to my 1A. But following him is Davante Adams. And I am in love with Davante Adams this year. In fact, an ideal draft for me would be somehow to land both of these guys between rounds 1 and 2. I think in a PPR league, you can't get much better than that. But Davante Adams, he really came into his own last year. He was the number 1 receiver for really the first time in Green Bay's offense, a favorite target of Aaron Rodgers, averaged a healthy 11.3 targets a game. And the big thing here in terms of red zone, which we do love, he topped the NFL with 31 red zone targets. That was actually 42% of the team total red zone targets. An unbelievable number, led the league in that stat, and we love that in fantasy. They didn't add anybody to take away targets from him. In fact, they lost Cobb, who wasn't the greatest, but certainly took away some of those targets. Davante Adams truly has 15-plus TD upside. He scored double-digit touchdowns last year, and there's no reason to suspect he can't do it again. We also, of course, like every year, love Julio Jones. The knock on Julio Jones is that he doesn't score touchdowns. He literally leads the league in almost every category. He's a huge production guy, but when they get in the red zone, they don't target him. He doesn't need much of an explanation as why you should draft him this year. He has the best strength of schedule, if you put any weight into that, for the elite wide receivers. Averages 10.6 targets a game. That was 3rd in the league. And his stats every year from 2017 continue to rise. He arguably could put up a 2,000-yard season at any moment. The only thing that's holding him back is that red zone usage. They have changed offensive coordinators in Atlanta, so I suspect that he should, at least, you would think, find a way to get more targets towards Julio Jones in the red zone. Adam Thielen is another guy that just took the league by storm last year. Playing in Minnesota, he averaged 11.4 targets throughout the beginning of the season, which is unbelievable. Has a really high efficiency rate, 74% catch rate. That's a nice solid floor for him. Even if they do dial back the number of pass attempts and the volume in the passing game, his consistency, the number of targets he gets, and his catch rate really helps him continue to maintain a nice floor. The good thing is, if you watch preseason, I think the stat is that Cousins completed 6 passes or 7 passes in the preseason. 4 of them went to Thielen. He caught every ball that was thrown his way. So you can see Cousins continues to feed him the ball. Thielen should remain the number one target. He plays in the slot. He's a nightmare in terms of matchups. He's a big guy, a fast, quick guy. If he continues to play in the slot, he should continue to exceed and be the number one guy in Minnesota going forward. Probably my favorite receiver going into 2019 that's not considered at the top of most people's boards is Amari Cooper for Dallas. Amari Cooper was traded from Oakland to Dallas last year, and man, did he take off with the Dallas offense. The bulk of the production for 2018 actually came with Dallas. His targets also increased. He went from 5.16 targets a game up to 8.4 targets a game in Dallas. And really, it just came down to a better offense and a better quarterback. I do love the fact that this offseason, Amari Cooper called out and said he wants a 2,000-yard season in Dallas. I love when receivers make those types of bold statements, but I really think he can do that. And you're getting him as an ADP 11th off the board receiver, possibly in the 3rd, maybe even 4th round, with a strength of schedule that's one of the easiest in the league. Really high on Amari Cooper this year. I'm looking to get him in almost every draft. And the final note here, if Zeke's out, they're going to have to throw the ball a little bit more. And the number one guy in that offense right now is Amari Cooper. The last guy I really wanted to call out here is Emmanuel Sanders for Denver. And I know this is a little bit of a stretch. He's really, really down on people's draft boards, but that's why I love him. If we're talking about a guy that can give you massive upside and value for his ADP, I think Sanders is that guy this year. He has always been a high production guy for Denver. He had an Achilles injury that ended his 2018 season. These types of injuries typically don't fare well for the wide receiver position. Most guys don't come back, at least to the level of production they had in the past. But I think Sanders has a chance to do something different here. I've watched a little bit of him in preseason. He looks like the old Emmanuel Sanders, quick, fast, in and out of routes. If you look at last year, he actually was wide receiver 10 until he suffered that injury. He fits well in Denver's offense, and they actually have an upgrade going into this year with Joe Flacco. If he doesn't have too big of a step back due to that injury, I think Emmanuel Sanders is a steal going into the 10th and 11th round. You're talking about a top 20 upside receiver. If he's at his best, you might be talking about a top 15, even top 10 receiver. And you can get him in the 10th round. I suspect he's going to have another big year, another typical Emmanuel Sanders year, and people are going to miss out on him in the 10th round. And since we only have 10 minutes, it's impossible for me to cover all the guys I love at the wide receiver position. Like I said, it's a deep position in 2019. But some other guys I really want to highlight, Juju Smith-Schuster for Pittsburgh. 10.5 targets a game, 4th in the league. He was the guy for the Steelers, not Antonio Brown last year. He had 30 red zone targets, which was second behind Devontae Adams, and he averaged 32% of the team's red zone usage in the passing game. Juju's high on my board. You could take any receiver from the Rams, Cooks, Woods, Kupp. Those guys succeed together. It doesn't matter. They play in a high-scoring offense. They all eat together. Julian Edelman, the staple of consistency at the wide receiver position in the NFL. He's Tom Brady's favorite target. He offers a solid floor each and every week, and he should see more production with Gronk off the field. A wild card for me, Zay Jones. He only averaged 6.5 targets a game last year, but if you focus towards the end of the Bills season, Josh Allen was performing at his highest. Those targets for Zay Jones went up to 8.4. But the big thing, he actually had 17 red zone targets last year. He averaged a staggering 40% of the team's red zone usage in the passing game. That ranks second in the league. For a guy that's going really late in drafts, I think he has a lot of upside if Josh Allen really takes off. AJ Green. He's out approximately 3 games going into the season, but I think he's really undervalued. You're talking about a guy that was an elite receiver the last couple of years, but for injury. He averages nearly 10 targets a game, and he gets all the red zone targets. If you could steal A.J. Green in the 4th, 5th, even 6th round in some drafts, I think he's really worth it. And finally, I have Robbie Anderson. If you believe in Darnold this year, I think you have to believe in Robbie Anderson. He had a great finish in 2018, and he continues to be the main target for Darnold. So there we have it. We covered the wide receiver position in under 10 minutes. I hope you guys enjoy these quick style videos, and I hope this benefits you and helps you get prepared for your draft. Enjoy your Labor Day weekend, and please consider subscribing to the channel, sharing this video, and comment below who you like at the wide receiver position. As always, good luck in your drafts, and I'll catch you at the next video.